Market sale. Only €2 on selected lines like Nestle Kit Kat 2 Finger Bars 9-pack. And until Sunday, Carlsberg 20 bottle box only €16. Centra. Live every day. Enjoy alcohol sensibly.
You ain't shit! I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
Well, fans can be the harshest critics, you know.
And they often are.
A wife is often the harshest critic of her husband.
I thought I was invincible. That's what you're trained to believe as a sports person.
There was 4 million people in Ireland who knew much more about managing football teams than I did. When it comes to music, I can spoof at the best.
Your sporting career is the best time you'll have, and you know you have to hang on to it for as long as you like, because everything else is pretty crappy.
And this is not lies. Stephen Rothschild has never spoken to Jimmy McGuinness in his life.
Well, you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5 o'clock. We're streaming the conversation as well now. So as well as listening on News Talk, you can watch us on the Off the Ball social channels for Periscope on Twitter, at Off the Ball, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on the new OTB Sports app available for iOS and Android. This is the Saturday panel, the subject, racism in sport. The panel in conjunction with Galway 2020 European Capital of Culture and the FAI to mark International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. So to talk about this important subject, we're delighted to be joined by the Republic of Ireland and West Ham goalkeeper Darren Randolph, the former All-Ireland Gaelic football winner with Dublin, Jason Sherlock, and the Intercultural National Strategy Coordinator with the FAI, Des Tomlinson. Darren, Jason, Des, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much. How are you?
Yeah, good lads. I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion today, and an educational discussion. Discrimination, abuse of a human being because of their skin colour, like we've seen with the George Floyd murder, the necessity of the Black Lives Matter movement, the Ian Wright case in the last year, that society, humanity has still a way to go when it comes to addressing the issue of racism. So we'd like to examine this subject in the context of sport in our conversation with you today. Before we get to Darren and Jason and their experiences, Des, I'll start with you. Talk to us about your work at the FAI and what the key goals that are paramount for you at the moment.
Well, thanks, John. So I've been working with the FAI since 2006. That's when I came to Ireland. The reason I came really because there was a job in relation to trying to look at the changing cultural landscape or demographic landscape of Ireland. 2006 would have been a point where probably a peak inward migration in Ireland, and lots of people from diverse backgrounds making Ireland their home. So it's about how can you use football to try and engage people. So the strategy really has 2 main objectives. One is to try and increase or promote increased participation. And then the second area of work, which isn't secondary and it's part of what we're talking about today, is to challenge racism and discrimination. So that's a major part of the work.
Darren and Jason, let's start at the beginning, and Des will bring you in this as well. Forgive me for my understanding of this, because I don't understand. I'm white. I will never understand the experience of racism. But all I can do is ask the questions here and hopefully get some understanding. Your own experiences of racism on and off the pitch, Darren. Your dad, Ed, he came from America to be a basketball star in Ireland. How prevalent was racism growing up for you, Darren, in Bray and County Wicklow?
Looking back now, pretty much an everyday occurrence. Probably at the time when you're a kid growing up, you don't take it as serious, or you don't kind of realize what's going on. But gradually then, you know, the older you get, the more you do start to learn, and then you start to understand what different terms mean, and, you know, the intent behind them. And again, the way kind of people would phrase sentences or statements. I mean, you know, for example, a simple example, probably being in school, having a little kind of afro, little thing, people always wanted to touch my hair. You know, they'd have like little, people get like the straws with the tissue or the paper, spit in them so they get stuck in my hair, putting pencils in my hair. Like I said, the usual, wanted to touch my hair. Again, other little little comments. And I used to always wonder, why there was no other mixed race or black people in my class. Why would I never see any other kind of ethnic backgrounds in any other sports that I would play, or even around Bray itself? So yeah, growing up, it was a weird one.
What was your emotions that it elicited from you? How did you feel when you got these approaches?
Well, yeah. Well, when I was younger, the main thing was mostly anger. Although I never got in that many fights, it was always anger. And then once the anger would pass, I'd spend a lot of time, thinking about what was said in different situations, and like asking myself why, basically. Why can't I just be left alone to do what I want to do and play football, basketball, Gaelic, hurling, played a little bit of rugby. Yeah, they were the main feelings. Was it discussed much at the dinner table, Darren, at home? Nah. I would never bring it up. I mean, I'm sure my dad, more so than my mum, would be at many football matches and Gaelic matches where he would hear stuff on the sideline. And this would be coming from parents. This isn't even coming from kids my own age or kids that would be watching, or the next age group that would be playing the game at 11:30. Once our game was finished. You'd have, especially when I was in goal, when I was younger, you would have groups of kids that would be, sat beside right beside the goal. They could, when I was growing up, you could do that. People would just go and sit there, like by the goal, and it would be constant. But I'm sure there's times, I know there's times my dad's heard certain comments while he was watching me play football and Gaelic growing up. So name calling mainly, was it? Yeah, name calling. Again, I'm not going to use names, but it would be, get that black so-and-so or hurt, whatever. Again, there'd be certain noises that would be made. And sad to say, it became normal, really. And did you block it out of your mind, Darren? Did you confront it? Did you take people on? It became normal. It was just something that I just put up with. It was not, there wasn't any kind of other managers or parents or anything else that would kind of step in and say anything to cut it all out. If it was football, obviously if I was in goal, there's nothing I could do there apart from win. And then when we would win, obviously I'd be very boastful about it. That's my way of getting people back. And also I knew I was quite good. So I always had that to fall back on. And in terms of Gaelic, I was one of the bigger kids from my age. So again, obviously as Jason's well aware, in Gaelic, you're able to get your own back on people and challenges. And I definitely took advantage in that sense as well. Jason, did you have a similar experience growing up in Dublin?
Yeah, I did. I'd be a bit more older than Darren. I remember I would have been a hero of his dad's. I used to go watch him play basketball. But I suppose growing up in Finglas, looking the way I look, I had a father who was Asian. My mother brought me up as a single parent. Things were challenging, and again, it ranged from kind of curious and slagging to kind of cynical and intent in terms of some of the comments or the slagging that you'd receive. So a bit like Darren, I think that the challenge I had, and potentially what Darren had, was what was right and wrong. And I think in those days there was no right or wrong. I didn't turn around and I wasn't able to say to people, you're wrong to say that. I didn't really have people stepping in to kind of highlight that people were wrong. It was just slagging, and that was the challenge for me. And obviously I'd like to think we're in a different place now in terms of the feeling that it would have had on me. And again, we're here, I suppose, to ensure that the next Darren Randolph or the next Dublin player doesn't have to kind of suffer the situations and the challenges that we had. It had a significant impact, because it's very hard to be highlighted and singled out for something you can't do anything about. And for me, it made me very angry, very frustrated. And again, I was always known as a fiery player on the pitch, because a lot of people just saw my response to slagging. They didn't actually hear or see what might have gone on beforehand. But away from the sporting field, and I didn't mind the sporting field because you feel you can compete there. But when you go back home and you're trying to question why you're being treated differently, it has big impacts on your self-esteem and your confidence. And again, you're so frustrated because you just want to fit in. You just want to be like everyone else. So that was the challenges that I had growing up. And I suppose then moving into, like, when I got a bit older, I still, on the sporting field, I would have still experienced racism in GAA. Players, obviously in Croke Park, I mightn't have heard some of the slagging that I would have got, but in League of Ireland, I played League of Ireland as well, and again, I would have been prime for kind of racial abuse in that environment as well. So again, it's great. It's not great sharing these stories and going back to those times, but it's great that we're actually talking about them and we're trying to make a difference and try to come up with solutions.
Does it alter your view, Jason, of how you see human beings, and does it make you a bit more cynical about people?
Yeah, I suppose it did at the time, but like with experience and reflection, you have a different take on it. And I think the one thing that sport has a great opportunity, and this whole time has given us all time to reflect, and sport is no different. I suppose, what do we stand for in terms of why we play sport, why we support a team, why we're associated with a club, why we run an organisation or an association? And I think the first part and the biggest part, and for me, what sport gave me was acceptance. You know, I craved acceptance, but I liked being part of a team. I liked being able to enjoy winning and losing. I liked being able to improve as a player in any sport I played. And that was a fundamental piece of sport for me. And again, human nature, you will always have cynical people, but I think if we do things with the right reasons, or looking for the right output in mind, I think we might go a long way to do that. And I think this time, obviously this pandemic has given us time to understand, well, why is sport so important to us, and what should sport look like moving forward?
I'm getting the sense, Darren, from listening to you about, being on the pitch when you're younger, that it's almost like an environment where this kind of stuff is accepted. That's grand. It's just part of the sporting environment and a passionate, intense environment. Was that the way maybe people thought about the way they were acting? Because they wouldn't act that, or was it the case that they acted like that all the time?
I don't know. I wouldn't say they. Well, again, I don't know. I only saw most of it on the pitches. I don't know what they were like away from the pitch. Again, I don't know if people used to do it to try and gain an advantage, to try and get them ahead and throw me off. I'm not sure, but as I said, after a while, it just became normal, and it was something that I, in a way, you asked obviously Jason how he felt towards people in general, and apart from my own teammates, I would go onto the pitch quite angry, especially more so in GAA than football. In football, if I was in goal, I can't run and tackle anybody, so I can't really get near anyone. But especially in GAA, it give me that, make me more aggressive, and maybe give me that extra edge that I'd probably needed to do better and stand out more. Because I saw myself, I was different than everybody else. There was nobody else my color. Every team we seemed to play against was white. And it wasn't then until probably 14, 15-ish, I probably met one other mixed race boy in Bray who actually joined my boyhood club. Also, in saying that as well, my godfather, Jerome Westbrooks, Jason might have heard of him, lives in the north side of Dublin. Again, he had mixed race kids as well, and we would go to the basketball games to watch, obviously, dads play, and there'd be conversations that we would have. And again, it would just be something we would talk about as if it's normal.
It's funny that I hear this stuff, Darren, and I think about most revered sports person in Ireland might be Paul McGrath.
Yeah, well, yeah, you think about that. And I can use it now in, what happens these days. One game, a certain player is, world class and everything else, and as soon as they have a bad game, the abuse starts, whether it's aimed at them or their family, if it's racial abuse, whatever. It's just how fickle some fans can be, and how fickle some people can be.
And what was your experience, Darren, as you moved to England and began to make it in the Premier League and in the English game?
Well, moved to southeast London, and I was I was 15, just turning 16. I was blown away because I'd never seen so many, different races in one place. Went into football, into the academy. My age group, there was nine players out of the 11 that were black, all different backgrounds, whether it be Jamaican, African. So I got to see and learn a lot about different cultures. But again, I would hear their stories of them being on buses and getting chased off buses or getting chased through certain areas by, stereotypical bald white racist. And I realized, that's what I suffered when I was growing up. I'd get chased, yeah, but not to the extent, or I didn't have any of the kind of stories that some of the boys from London had. But in a weird way, it kind of made me feel more comfortable, more accepted, and I had other people that could share in my experience. Unknowingly, to me, I kind of gravitated towards, the black people in the changing room. You feel like you had something in common. Don't get me wrong, the changing room wasn't segregated as black people on one side, white people on the other side. But I mean, off the pitch, if we're in the canteen or in the changing room and outside of football, that's just where I found myself. Especially at the beginning when there was more mixed race people around, more black people around.
Des, you grew up in London and you've moved to Ireland, and I'm hearing from Darren and from Jason that sometimes most people are good. I would say that most people are good, and there are so many great people out there. But unfortunately, there is an element in society we think is not on our doorstep, but then when we hear these stories, you realise this behaviour and this loose behaviour and this disgraceful, disgusting behaviour is on our doorstep. What's your experience been both in London and from moving to Ireland, and what you've observed?
Yeah, brought up in London. Parents came from the Caribbean, small island called Jamaica, in the 60s. I was born in the mid-60s. So if you go through the 70s and through the 80s, and Darren spoke there about, people being chased, and that's something that was there in terms of far-right groups. So organised groups that organised on the basis that they hated certain people, and they would go out and carry out certain actions. So that's something that, I would have been familiar with. I have a very clear memory of having to come in on a Friday night by a certain time because there would be a National Front march or something like this going on. And then we'd have seen the National Front and other groups trying to infiltrate football, trying to kind of, send their message through the game of football. So definitely it's something that's there. And I think one of the biggest things for Ireland and coming to Ireland, one of the biggest things that you didn't see was that. You didn't see organised groups on that basis. But one of the things we have to safeguard against in Ireland is that does happen. People become more organised in the way they think about difference and have certain ideologies that they hold. So yeah, certainly an experience that I would have had growing up in London. I haven't played professional football. I played semi-professional football, and playing in London, not really that many experiences, but going outside London, I remember experiences, people making comments. So yeah, and that's me just playing at a low level of football.
Education, I think, is key, Jason, isn't it? It begins with the parents, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think it's a big part of it, and a lot of racism I would have experienced growing up was I would use the word ignorance, that there was a lack of education, but that's not an excuse anymore. The world we live in, we do have we should all be at a level and an understanding of what's right and what's wrong. I think a big part, and again, thinking of what the solution is, and I suppose we all have to play a part in it, but I think the first thing is empowering people, both people that could be potentially at the suffer from racism, but also people that potentially could give racism and be racist, is to empower them to understand what's right or wrong. And again, that comes to education. And yeah, it certainly starts in the home, but then from a sporting context, obviously sporting clubs, sporting organisations have a big responsibility and a big role in that as well. I think I look, even when I mentioned when I played, and I suppose I suffered a bit of racism on the pitch. And one thing, when I grew up, I played a lot of sports and I loved sport. And for soccer in Ireland, my club actually was Bohemians. Even though I played for Shamrock Rovers at one stage, because my family used to live in Phibsborough. My uncle Brian used to bring me to all the games. I used to love Dalymount Park, watching that old team with Jackie Jemison, Rocky O'Brien, some great players. And then when I was a bit older, we could break in at the back of at Des Kelly's there. We could bunk into games. I was in an under-21 squad. We played against England as well in Dalymount, and it was great because my school was close by. But then I played a match for UCD at the time. It was just after we won an All-Ireland with Dublin. And I suppose I'm sure there was a lot of Dublin supporters that were Bow supporters as well. But I suppose one of the most resonating memories I have of playing was hearing a racist chant bellowing out of the main stand in Dalymount. Now, when you're 19, 20 years of age, in those days, it was hard enough as a small centre forward to look after yourself physically. But when you're hearing this coming from the stand, that's a tough image to take on board and to have to deal with. Now, I fast forward, that's whatever it was, 25 years ago. I look at the great work Bows are doing now, inviting people from direct provision coming in to watch games. I look at the announcement with DCU about the values embedding in the local community. I look at the atmosphere at some of the games now. There's a really positive vibe there, and Bows are starting to stand for something really positive in the community, and I commend that. And that's the way we should be going. That's what we want our clubs to epitomise, that we accept and we welcome and we build each club and have that uniqueness about it. But again, it just shows you, I suppose, the journey that I experienced to where we are and where we hope that we can continue to go.
Darren, do you think society is on a better journey from when you were young and you're getting that type of abuse on the Gaelic pitch or on the soccer pitch? Do you think if a young guy in Bray now who's black would experience the same thing, or are you hopeful that it would not be as bad as that?
I'd love to tell you it doesn't happen and everything changed. Well, I get messages from young kids on Instagram from different areas of Dublin and around Ireland in general. Yeah, it's, you know, that when I do get to go back home now, I do see a lot more different races with a Dublin or an Irish accent. And I love to see that. But unfortunately, I don't think, you know, much has really changed. Again, like Des said about the National Front, the NF groups that would actively go out and search for, you know, certain groups. I suppose when I was growing up, it was more hidden. Again, you didn't have those groups, but you'd have little sly remarks, or if people were driving by in a car, there'd be something shouted out the window, or they just slow down and just drive beside me and my friends, and just be a few seconds of abuse, and then off they go. But listen, the good thing is being spoke about, and people are being made more aware. And like Jason said, I would put it down to ignorance. But again, you can't use that as an excuse. I try when I can. Again, because I still do come across a lot of people from, again, the older generation that will still use the word coloured. So then to explain to them that that's not the right term, and that's obviously a lot more offensive. And some people generally say to me, listen, I feel it makes the person feel more uncomfortable calling somebody black. They would prefer to say coloured, when in truth, that's more offensive than actually, you know, saying, oh, that black person over there.
What do we need to do, Des?
There's a couple of things, more than a couple. I think if you listen to Darren and you listen to Jason and you listen to their experiences in sport, I think that tells us that, you know, people have been, continue to be targeted just because something about them. So I think part of it is about education, without a doubt, and that's true. Sometimes, you know, you can educate some people and they'll have a mind shift, or they'll recognise maybe something was said inappropriately or it was wrong. Other people you can't. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. So then you need to have other mechanisms to deal with that, and that's about what you have in place, how that's dealt with on the pitch when it's heard and seen by referees, how that's dealt with by football bodies when it comes to looking at disciplinary sanctions for cases that are taken, tested and proven. And it's about people like Jason and Darren doing what they're doing now, sharing their experience and being very brave in doing that and saying, look, this happened and it was impactful. And I think sometimes when you think about racism, when people think about racism, they just think, oh, it's just comments. It's just a few comments and you just get on with it, or you don't worry about it. But it's not just comments. It's more than that. And I think if people can understand that, get a real firm sense of that it isn't just words. And outside of that, when you think about it in society, it's actually, we have laws in Ireland. We have equality legislation that protects people against behaviours like this. We have the Irish Human Rights and Equality Act, which protects people's human rights. So we're not just talking about some words, some suggestions, some gestures. We're talking about things that impact on people and things that shouldn't happen because they're wrong. They're wrong in terms of sport, they're morally wrong, but they're also wrong in terms of the law.
Okay, we need to take a break. We'll be back with more of the Saturday panel on racism in sport with Darren Randolph, Jason Sherlock and Des Tomlinson after this.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Right, you can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
Welcome to Go Loud Jazz, the new home for jazz music in all its forms. Big band, bebop, smooth, and everything in between. Featuring a mix of new tunes and famous tracks by legendary artists, from Monk and Davis, Parker and Coltrane, to Ella and Billy. Go Loud Jazz. Fascinating rhythms. Download the Go Loud app now for free. Go Loud. Podcasts, radio, and music to your ears.
DoneDeal has the largest range of premium cars in Ireland from all of Ireland's trusted car dealerships. That's why you will find Lions of Limerick Land Rover on DoneDeal. Connect with Lions of Limerick Land Rover on DoneDeal today and they will deal directly and deliver safely to you. DoneDeal, for premium deals to feel great about from all of Ireland's trusted car dealerships.
Connect more with Air Mobile. Switch to Air for the latest iPhones, including the iPhone 12 mini from only €49, plus no limits 5G data, unlimited calls and texts, and 99% 4G coverage, all on Ireland's largest 5G network. Call 1-800-500-300 or visit air.ie. Air. Let's make possible. Unlimited allowance subject to fair use. Handset price subject to switching to Air. Available on selected plans. 5G network coverage subject to availability. For terms, see air.ie.
Be safe. Support local. Stay at home. Because it's up to us.
Oh, Brady family ham, well, it's his, your only ham. Cured for 3 full days and there's no added water. Always carved from one pork joint, other hams, well, what's the point? It's the nation's ham from Mizzin up to Malinhead. Come out to other hams, come and face me ham to ham. Show them how you're made with mold and added water. And tell them how Brady family ham chased you away from the green and lonely fields of Kildara. Brady family ham, it's your only ham.
Remember being 21, when football practice left you full of energy and ready for anything, not slumped on the sofa with a pack of frozen peas on your foot.
Feel 21 again with Aviva. Get 21% off your car insurance when you buy online, because 2021 is the year when good things should happen. For car insurance, you're safe in the hands of Aviva. Buy now at aviva.ie. Acceptance criteria, terms and conditions apply. Offer subject to minimum premium of €280. New car policies only. See aviva.ie for full details. Car insurance is underwritten by Aviva Insurance Ireland DAC. Aviva Direct Ireland Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Introducing Cuisinart's new cordless collection. Now you can chop, whisk, mix or blend wherever the inspiration takes you, with no cable getting in the way. Discover the cordless range at pariscity.ie.
Picture yourself on a stunning beach in Connemara, gazing up at the 12 Bends, hiking in the National Park, scenic walks and cycling the Connemara Greenway. Now imagine yourself at Ballynahinch Castle, enjoying all this and 700 acres of natural beauty. Surround yourself with space this summer at Ballynahinch Castle. Book now at ballynahinchcastle.com.
It's Ireland versus England in the Six Nations this weekend, while Wales take on France for the Grand Slam. For comprehensive analysis from Ireland and England, with Peter O'Reilly, Stephen Jones and Stuart Barnes giving the view from here and there, pick up your copy of the Sunday Times or subscribe at thetimes.ie/join.
Let's go upstairs.
Would you go away? I'm working.
Maybe she welcomes the distraction.
Nah, you're not. Come here.
No, not now. I'm busy.
Maybe she's flattered he's still interested.
I don't think so.
Seriously, stop it. Come on.
Sure, it's their business.
Just stop.
They're a couple.
Let's stop excusing sexual harassment and sexual violence. Enough is enough. Learn more at gov.ie/no excuses, or in an emergency call 999.
From true crime believers to science and business achievers, sports, arts and comedy, to the latest entertainment wannabe. Get political, get healthy, get educated. Get all your favourite podcasts on Go Loud. Download the Go Loud app now or add us on your smart speaker. Go Loud. Podcasts, radio and music to your ears.
News Talk already gives you your daily fix of news and entertainment. But wouldn't you like a little bit more? News Talk Extra is everything you might have missed, plus expert tips, podcasts and competitions, all straight to your inbox. Subscribe now at newstalk.com/extra. Across Ireland. This is the IMRO Radio Awards National Station of the Year. This is News Talk.
It's 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Murphy. The head of the HSE says people won't be given the choice of receiving one COVID-19 vaccine over another. The rollout of AstraZeneca's jab resumed today following a week-long suspension over blood clotting concerns. The European Medicines Agency has since ruled it's safe and effective. A small number of patients are receiving doses in hospitals today. HSE Chief Executive Paul Reid says there'll be no picking and choosing.
There will be no situation where there's a choice of one vaccine over another. We'll administer it based on the safety and effectiveness of all three vaccines that we have available to us.
There are 328 people with COVID in hospital this afternoon, less than half the number on this day last month. Latest figures also show there are 83 patients being treated in intensive care units. Well, leaders in Europe, meanwhile, are warning of a third wave of COVID-19. Millions of people in France and Poland are under fresh lockdowns as new variants of the virus circulate. The German Chancellor says it's likely the country will need an emergency break by reimposing restrictions to contain a surge in cases. In other news, it's understood that a man stabbed his mother and girlfriend in a double murder-suicide in Newtown Abbey near Belfast. Police are investigating the discovery of 3 bodies at separate properties last night, but say they're not looking for any suspects. Officers had responded to a report of a knife incident in the Derry Coolway area shortly before 11 p.m. John Finucane is a local MP.
The local community are absolutely shocked and stunned by these killings. And I think these brutal killings highlight once again, especially during the pandemic, the need for a violence against women and girls strategy here in the north.
Construction workers could be back building houses from the 5th of April under government plans. The phased reopening of the sector is being considered by ministers, but a decision isn't expected until the end of the month. The Construction Industry Federation says jobs are under threat and many firms face closure due to the ongoing restrictions. Director General Tom Perlin says keeping sites closed is having a big impact.
It's going to continue to stall the supply of houses. It's going to mean that because Ireland is the only country that hasn't opened its construction industry, our workers here are getting exasperated. They're travelling to the UK, travelling to the continent, and we lose them forevermore. We won't be able to get them back.
And Leaving Cert students won't be permitted to wear face masks during their upcoming oral exams. Perspex screens will be used instead to ensure clear communication. It's 2 minutes past 2.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to the AA. For our most competitive discounts on car insurance, go online to the aa.ie.
Mainly cloudy today, but staying dry with brighter sunny spells. Highest temperatures 9 to 13 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
Well, you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 5 o'clock. We're streaming live now as well as listening on News Talk. You can watch us on the social channels for Off the Ball, for Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, on YouTube, on Facebook. You can also listen or watch on the OTB Sports app, available for iOS and Android. The subject of this week's Saturday panel, racism in sport. The panel in conjunction with Galway 2020, European Capital of Culture, and the FAI to mark International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. So to talk about this important subject, we're delighted to be joined by the Republic of Ireland goalkeeper, the West Ham goalkeeper Darren Randolph, the former All-Ireland Gaelic footballer winning player from Dublin, Jason Sherlock, and the Intercultural National Strategy Coordinator with the FAI, Des Tomlinson. Darren, are you active on social media?
Yeah, I'm on there, yeah.
Have you got racial abuse on social media?
Yeah, I get all kinds of abuse, but yeah, there's racial abuse on there. At first, you just read it, block, delete. But then after a while, I just thought, it was one of the evenings I was sat in the house. I can't remember if I played a game or there was something that happened. There was a video or something, and like I was getting messages coming through, and I just decided I was just going to start screenshotting the messages and putting them on my story for everybody to see, so that the person's name. If they're brave enough to put their face on these Instagram accounts, that will obviously show up on my story. And again, just tag Facebook, Instagram. Now, I'm not sure if any of the accounts were blocked, but the messages I started to receive then stopped. I got a lot of messages from people that I'd screenshotted and posted, apologizing and saying, "Oh, listen, it's only a bit of fun. I just wanted to get reaction, get a bite out of you." Then it goes back to, "Oh, I think, you're a great keeper, blah blah blah," and they start trying to go back to some positive things you've obviously done in sports. And even now, if I see some other players that post any abuse that they get, I do the same thing. I screenshot their messages and I post it on my story, because the only way it's going to get dealt with and remain relevant in people's mind is if it's in people's faces all the time. So that I feel now at the minute, that's kind of how I'm choosing to deal with it, because I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing about it on Sky Sports News about players being racially abused and nothing happening. As I said, it's only recently there's accounts being suspended and people being arrested.
Social media companies need to do more, obviously, don't they?
They do. I understand, though, with Facebook and whatever, Twitter, the freedom of speech kind of platform where people can go and have a voice. One thing I always do try and remember is sometimes the people who are giving the abuse could be somebody with a handful of friends and not much going on in their life, and they're just bored and they decide to send out messages. But that doesn't make it okay, because the impact that could have on a person. Again, I was quite lucky growing up with the family that I had. And in myself, I was quite a confident person anyway. So yes, it affected me, and I would think about it, but it would never get me down. I never think, "Oh, I'm not leaving the house," or, "Oh, I got chased walking past this estate last week, so I'm not walking by there again." I would just carry on as normal. But again, not everybody is built like that, and they shouldn't have to take it. I don't think most people would say what they say online to someone's face in the street. But once they're behind a keyboard, an iPhone, wherever, they seem to feel like it's okay to say whatever they want.
Des, we saw that with the Ian Wright case recently. A teenager was brought before the courts around that. Social media companies, there has to be some kind of regulation around accounts and passports and killing this hate speech.
Yeah, I mean, social media companies have an obligation. I think social media companies sometimes do argue freedom of speech. And okay, yeah, everyone has freedom of speech, but freedom of speech is not an absolute human right. It's a qualified human right. That means that if it breaches some other human rights, you don't get it. So social media platforms need to be able to know when people are making comments and really trying to impact people because of something about them, and to do something about it. Now, in the case of Ireland, the government is currently going through a process of reviewing. It started in 2019. Hate speech legislation, the Prohibition of Incitement to Hatred Act. And I understand that that act will now, once it's enacted, the new legislation will put an onus on social media companies that they do need to act. So even if it's not something that they should do as a moral obligation, it's something they're going to need to do because it's part of the law. And I think those are some of the drivers that need to be in place to make sure that social media companies do act and don't hide behind freedom of speech when it's clear that there are hateful, racist comments that need to be dealt with.
Jason, I'm almost feeling that the people on the street that would have given you racist abuse 25 years ago or on the pitch have almost migrated now to this platform as a small minority, but a toxic minority.
Yeah, well, it's certainly given them a license. I suppose it's a blessing that probably Twitter and whatever wasn't around when I played. I can only imagine what it'd be like after some of the games we played. But I had a situation a few years ago. It was before an All-Ireland final Dublin were in, and a comment came in, just one of those go back to your country. And it was a strange one, because normally it would be something that I would ignore and forget about, but I actually highlighted it, and I put it out there, retweeted, I wonder who this guy is, and I ended up someone got in touch with me. We found him pretty easy, and I actually ended up meeting him and his mother, and just sat down just to explain what impact that his comment had on me in terms of me growing up and the feelings that I had. And again, like, he was very remorseful and he was very young, and hopefully he learned his lesson. But the thing that came out of that situation for me, or experience for me, and it's something that I would like any young boy or girl that suffers from racism in the future thinks about, is that I will never be the victim of racism again, because I'm not the one with the problem. And for a lot of my growing years, I didn't see that. I thought I had the problem. And again, like, I suppose the social media platforms now they've magnified what can happen and how racist comments can be made so easily. So absolutely, there is a responsibility on these outlets to do it. But as well, I think it's the support structure around people that might be on the other end. I think that's really important as well.
We saw Cyrus Christie was on the show last year, Darren, and he spoke about how some kid just racially abused him. We had James McLean on recently for a different reason, not about race, but about the sectarian abuse and just the hatred that is out there towards James McLean from a toxic minority. Calling this out, have you seen people call it out? Have you seen supporters call it out? Do you think people are afraid to? We'd love to see a bit more of that, wouldn't we?
It'd be great to see more of it. Before I get into obviously Cyrus and James, when I ask over here at football matches, or they have been asking, if you see or hear anybody being racist or anything like that, sat around you, make somebody aware. But it just takes people being brave. And I guess once people are in a big crowd, and there may be a group of people shouting stuff, some people will be afraid to be that one person to call them out. And it's kind of like, I'll just turn a blind eye. There's 50,000 people in here, the players can't hear it. Or you may be sat in a certain section of the crowd where it's a weekly thing. So yeah, it probably takes people kind of to be a little bit more brave to probably say something. But again, hopefully that will come. Going back to Cyrus, been in a lot of the Irish camps with Cyrus, quite close, speak a lot, especially on the trips. I've been sat beside him. Some of the times after we've played certain games and he's gone on Twitter or Instagram and the messages are flooding in. I think it was after the playoff game against Denmark, he got quite a lot of racist abuse. He ended up obviously having to fly back to Dublin to meet up with the police, obviously to go through everything and give a statement. And again, I'm not sure of the ins and outs, but in the end, it was kind of like, there's not much we can do. It almost felt like, I remember, Cyrus saying it to me, because at the time we were both at Middlesbrough, and he said to me, it almost felt like it's too much work to do to try and, track down somebody and go speak to them and, kind of just let it go. And again, I see it all the time with James. Again, I've reposted stuff that's been said about Cyrus. I've reposted stuff that's been said about James. James is also, as you know, outspoken, so he's not afraid to repost stuff. I've reposted stuff even recently about, Shane Duffy and stuff. Yes. Stuff that's been said about him, and the unfortunate passing of his dad, and obviously that all comes under the sectarian kind of section. So there is, I think, now gradually more and more people that are kind of sticking together and kind of reposting and trying to keep the topic of racism alive. Again, going back to the George Floyd movement with Black Lives Matter and taking the knee, has taking the knee lost kind of the effect as it did at the very start? Now that's an individual kind of preference, as you like. Just because someone decides not to take the knee does not necessarily mean that they're against, Black Lives Matter or
Wilfred Zaha. Yeah.
Well, exactly. So Wilfred may choose to, voice his opinion and take his stand in a completely different way. And Wilfred does, again, suffer from a lot of abuse. And if you're someone who suffers from a lot of abuse and you don't see anything change, it can be very, very frustrating.
Is there a protocol in the FAI, Des, to, I'm looking at the under-21 squad was released yesterday, and there's some black players in that. We had Tyreek Wright, horrific abuse when he was in the UK not too long ago, and Aston Villa were investigating that. Is there a protocol when you see this kind of thing happen to the likes of Cyrus and what Darren has been explaining there?
Yeah, there is a protocol. It's actually been under review as of last year. If you speak to Cyrus, coming out of what happened to him, Cyrus felt like he wasn't treated as the victim, the person. He was treated as someone that wasn't the victim. So I think that's something that needs to change. But in terms of a protocol, there is a protocol which essentially is about gathering the evidence, so, to capture the comments, to remove the account, and to report the abuse onto relevant authorities. At the moment, there's a slight gap in the reporting piece because the government is still to bring forward the new legislation. So at that point, hate speech will be defined in law. So when you're reporting it to the guards, they have something that they can focus on in terms of the law. So yeah, there is a protocol in place. There's more work to be done to make sure it operates 110% properly. And all of the discussions that we're having here today, for me, what's important is that people hold the association to account. So when you hear voices like Darren, you hear voices like Cyrus or other people, James, that's about holding the FAI to account as an association, as well as the social media companies, because only through doing that will get real change. I did want to just make one comment, and it's just in relation to just the impact. So James McLean spoke about the impact on his family and on him, and I think if anyone really tries to really understand this issue, they really need to understand it from its impact. Cyrus did a thing for us a couple of weeks back with co-ramblers, and he did a video. He couldn't join the piece himself, but he started off by saying the first time he experienced racism, and he was age 7. He was age 7, if you think about that, age 7, and he still remembers it as an experience. And there are other people that aren't professional footballers or other sports that would have experienced racism at a very young age, and it can have an impact. And one of the things that I think sometimes can happen is that people can sometimes mask their feeling. They may not be so strong as, say, Darren or Cyrus or James, then they're just going to mask the way that they're feeling. So they might just go along with things, but it becomes normalised. And what we want is for people, one, to understand that this is impactful, and two, for the people who have experience, that they can talk about it. I think that's important.
Absolutely. And I think that Jason and Darren and yourself, Des, have been very articulate in giving an understanding to what you've been through on this conversation. Jason, it was heartwarming to kind of read the story about the Westmeath footballer, Boydo Saya, who was well integrated into the community. He's spoken about the positives of being involved in the GAA. I think another step further would be, as you've explained before in your discussions, would be to bring anti-racism into coaching.
Yeah. I think going back to my one of my first points about that identity of a club and what they stand for. And for me, sport is all about acceptance. It's about welcoming people into your club or your sport and allowing them have an experience, and the club reaps rewards from that. So that's what sport should be all about, and no matter what level in terms of development. And I think as well, with all the kind of issues globally at the moment that have happened, like the one thing that's really coming out as well is it's not good enough to say you're not a racist anymore. How can you be anti-racist? And it goes back to Darren's point there about if you see something, you say it. Like it's not good enough just to stay silent, because if you stay silent, you're fueling the situation. I'm not saying you have to use physical abuse, but you can report someone, you can empathize with someone who is suffering or is the victim of racism. There's so much that you can do to assist a situation like that, and really we all have a role in that, and certainly that starts with the club, be it soccer, Gaelic, hurling, basketball. It all starts with the club setting the right tone and giving the right messages to your players and the parents that are involved.
And the media has a role to play as well, Des. When I think of Raheem Sterling or Meghan Markle, I kind of see an undercurrent there. Is that something you would agree with, that there is an undercurrent in the way they're treated?
Yeah, stereotypes, prejudice towards people, these all feed into how things impact on people. So if you're in the media and you're in some way supporting, whether tacitly or explicitly supporting certain stereotypes about people, then yeah, it's going to have an impact. It's going to have an impact on the person, but it's going to have an impact on people that might look like that person that are out in society. So yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that we do around education, we work with Show Race and Red Card in schools, and one of the things that we talk to young people about is this pyramid of hate. And this pyramid basically starts at the bottom, where people might think, well, telling jokes or having slagging people off is just a bit of fun. But as you go up that pyramid, it changes. So that can turn to, kind of physical abuse, and it can turn to graffiti, or it can turn to other things, and you go up a little bit more and it can turn to violence, and it can turn to impacts on people. So yes, stereotypes that are either supported through the media or started through certain media outlets, they have an impact, and the media needs to, just like Jason said, everyone needs to call it out. It's not just down to me, you, Cyrus, or Jason. Everyone needs to do it.
I will come back to just to finish your thoughts on the debate we've been having in a few moments' time. I just want to ask you about yourselves at the moment. Darren, you must be cutting a frustrated figure, not being involved and going to Serbia during the week.
Yeah, I'm dealing with an injury probably since last March. So it's probably coming up to about a year now. I've had just been trying to manage it. Get to a certain point to kind of break down, have a few weeks off, and then I come back and I think, right, I'll be fine, and break down again. So finally got to the stage where I needed just to rest completely. And unfortunately, the 3 games just come too quick. I'll probably just be back in training, full training. The week of them games, and then having the 3 games in 9 days. I think that'd be too much. And I don't want to go back, another 2 or 3 steps in the rehab process. I want to get over it and put it past me. So it's boring, but it's part of the life. you know, as things stand now, there's not much to do. So it's just training ground, physio rooms, gym. I'm lucky if I see a bit of grass for 20 minutes and then back home to, you know, ice, game ready, complex, do whatever the treatments I need to do, and then just repeat the next day.
Have you spoken to Queeveen?
I spoke to Queeveen last week to check up on him and his injury. He had a slight oblique injury, and he said he'd be touch and go to make the squad. Well, obviously, I've seen he's in the squad, and the four youngsters, young pups have been named. So you know, I'm sure whoever he goes with will do a brilliant job.
It's been a frustrating time for Stephen Kenny, hasn't it? Like Darren, it almost feels like we haven't got off the ground yet. We haven't had the start of this yet. With the Slovakia game was disappointing, but there's been so many things through COVID, through injuries, through him not being able to get over to England. It's been a tough one for him. Yeah,
to start off with was, it was probably COVID. We ended up missing 7 or 8 players for you know, a bunch of the games. Some of them turned out to be false positives, and I won't go into all of that. But yeah, so he hasn't been helped by the fact he's missed players. You know, we've had some decent performances. Slovakia, we played well, just didn't score. Him, Keith, the staff, everyone's just desperate for a result and to kind of get the ball rolling, just get a bit of momentum, get a bit of belief back as well, because a lot of the boys that are just in the squad now are quite young. It's all quite new to them. And it can be tough when you come into a team that's not getting results. It can be hard sometimes for the youngsters to kind of just come on and express themselves. You know, when you're on the end of kind of negative results, and on top of that, playing for your country, negative publicity. And the youngsters are quite well protected in terms of media-wise. You know, the older ones try and take most of the media stuff, but we've got some very good young players. So, hopefully we just get off to a good start in these group games, and then it's something to build on going forward.
You've had a great season at West Ham as a club. It's David Moyes. It's been something else in the Premier League.
Yeah, well, going from being 4th from bottom when he took over last year to what we now joint 5th, 6th. I mean, it's I don't think anybody's seen it coming. But I mean, we've been very good all season long. From when he first came in, you know, we were leaking a lot of goals, silly mistakes. So he's kind of had to start from the basics really, and just build a solid kind of foundation. Stop the silly errors, stop making mistakes. Once that's corrected, then he can move on to something else. So yeah, he's definitely trying to build something. And this season so far has been a very enjoyable one. And obviously then there's talk of European football, get everybody excited. And that would be an exceptional season if it happens. But again, there's a lot of good teams and a lot of games left where anything can happen.
Hopefully will happen for you, Darren, next season. Jason, I was a big man for the Hill when I was younger, and in 1995, that long hot summer when you were starring as a 19-year-old for the Dubs at Croke Park. It's hard to believe, Jason. I'm sitting here talking to Jason Sherlock, and Dublin are going for 7 in a row this year.
Yeah, it certainly is. Whatever about 95, certainly in 2008, after Dublin hadn't been in an All-Ireland final since then, who would have believed it? But obviously that's full credit to what's gone on in Dublin football for whatever the last 15, 20 years. And there's just a really talented crop of guys at the moment that obviously I was lucky enough to coach for a while, and they're an exceptional bunch. And again, and Darren knows that the biggest challenge for any sports person is to continue to perform week on week or game from game, and they've just done that. So admittedly, kind of last year with everything that was going on, it was hard to kind of get stuck into it, but certainly the GAA, it was great to have something in those winter months. And obviously we hope we'll have the GAA Championship starting off soon enough. And who knows, maybe this whole situation has helped the GAA in terms of defining what the season should look like. And there are benefits for it. So like as an avid sports person, it's been great to have sport to look forward to watching. If it's the Premiership, if it was the GAA, obviously we're out of Cheltenham week. Shane Lowry's playing well again in the golf. So yeah, it's great that sport can give us that release and kind of let us forget about reality from time to time.
Well, thank God we have radio in the afternoons on the weekend, Jason, and we have the TV then in the evenings to watch all the sport, lads. Just to finish up, it's been a serious conversation. I really appreciate your time. We all do here on News Talk and Off the Ball to give us such candid expressions of your experiences. Des, just to finish, action now is the key. Awareness, education, bringing this really serious issue of racial abuse to the forefront of people's minds and the impact it can have not only on the individual but on the family. What actions would you like to see going forward so we have a better society for the future generations?
What I want to see is that throughout sport that we everybody calls it out. So it's called out and it's clear and people understand exactly what racism is, and in terms of people's policies and procedures. So that goes from having a rule in your rule book, but also goes from what happens on the ground operationally with referees, that referees understand how they can deal with it. I think, as Jason said, there's education for coaches, there's education for other people involved in sport. I know that at the moment, Sport Ireland and the Department of Sport are really now starting to look at racism and discrimination, looking at policies and procedures and trying to work with national governing bodies around that, and that's a welcome thing. But really to make sure that we can evidence what we're doing. So not just to have these policies and procedures, but be able to evidence, so that when the question I think that you asked to Darren was, does he feel that there are young people still experiencing what he experienced? And I think his answer was yes. So we need to evidence the fact that we have these policies and procedures in place, but when that question gets asked again, then hopefully Darren's answer can be different and my answer can be different. I can say, well, we've had cases, but we've dealt with them, but they're not at high level. So yeah, those are the things that need to happen in terms of action. But certainly, as I said earlier on, I welcome the fact that you have high profile people prepared to talk about the issue and keep it on the table. So more work for sport to do in terms of national governing bodies, more work for social media companies to do in terms of hate speech, and just more work in terms of just general education around what is a very serious issue.
And Darren, your final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think, like Des said, and even as Jason said earlier, it's education. Just trying to educate people, keep it on the table for everybody to see, and so it stays relevant. Again, as we touched on earlier, for people to be brave, and as Jason said, you don't have to get physical or verbal with somebody. If there's you want to report it to somebody, do so. But again, by not kind of acting or doing anything, you're kind of part of the problem, instead of, because sometimes calling somebody out, or somebody, like Jason said when he received that tweet about saying go back to your own country, and he ended up meeting up with a young kid who it was. He was very probably remorseful and probably embarrassed. And a lot of the time, people will get embarrassed when they're called out and confronted, because when they will say a certain, when they make a comment or a statement towards you, they think it's just you two. But then when it's brought in for more people to see, and the light's then shone on them for being the person that said what they've said, a lot of people don't like it. So again, yeah, just say to be more vocal about it, and yeah, try and educate people more.
And Jason, what I've taken from this hour is we need to listen and we need to have our eyes open about this.
Yeah, and we need to continue the conversation, because like if we're not having the conversation, nobody is. And I think the one thing we all have in common is we love sport and we appreciate sport. It's a special thing, and it's an opportunity we want to provide for any young boy and girl. So we want to respect that and give any young boy or girl the chance to exceed and play at the level that Darren has done. And I think we all have a part to play in that.
We got to leave it there. Such an important conversation about racism in sport. Darren Randolph, Jason Sherlock, Des Tomlinson, you've been so generous to give us your time this afternoon and speak so well about this serious issue. Mind yourselves. This is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. We're back after this.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
This Sunday morning on Alive and Kicking, Irish philosopher Richard Carney on his new book, Touch, Recovering Our Most Vital Sense. Derek Evans, aka Mr. Motivator, on being at the forefront of home workouts and why now he's looking out for the forgotten groups, such as older people and those with mobility issues. And Hector O'Huckagon on why men need to speak up more about their intimate health issues.